and the topic is the relationship between religion and health. Dr. Poe, you know, I think you've given us excellent information dealing with the relationship between religion and health. But now, what about some of those individuals who are somehow bullheaded, quote, enough not to be willing to believe of this relationship? And also, is this relationship as new as we seem to think that the relationship is? Talk about it from that perspective.
Well, no, it's not. There are, at last, based on Dr. Haney at Duke's comments at a conference that I mentioned earlier, he indicates that about 5% of our nation's physicians have begun to address the spiritual needs of their patients. That's a very, very small percentage. And so we're not really giving adequate attention to this particular area. Now, Freud, for example, who wrote and who spoke between about 1904 and to 1939 when he died, was very critical of religion. As a matter of fact, took the position that God was a figment of people's imagination. So there's been this division between psychiatry, modern psychiatry, and religion that goes back probably 300 or 400 years. That's beginning to show some signs of falling now, but we still have a long, long way to go. At last count, there are about 14 psychiatric residencies that offer courses or instruction to their residents in psychiatry in the area of spirituality and mental health. Now, if we go back, though, before 600 years ago, we discover that the church or religion and medicine were interlocked. The church established most of the hospitals before the 16th century. Most of the nurses were from religious orders, such as the Sisters of Charity and the deaconesses. And so this was true going back to about 307. As a matter of fact, the first hospital in the West was started in a place called Caesarea, Turkey, by the Eastern Orthodox Church. This was in 370 AD. And for 1,200 years after that, the church and medicine basically were integrated. They were interlocked. As a matter of fact, in the West and most ancient cultures, the physician also was a minister. Okay? As a matter of fact, in the first 100 years of the history of this country, most of our doctors were ministers first, and the medicine part was practiced as a sideline to help supplement their income. So it's only been in the last 300 or 400 years that medicine and religion and health have become separated. As I said before, now there's some signs of them coming back together. So in my case, for example, I'm a physician or psychiatrist, I'm also a minister, but that was not unique 600 years ago, because the minister and the physician were one and the same person, okay? So then encouraging people to pray, which I've done now for the last 25 years, encouraging them to go to church, encouraging them to put their faith and trust in God, encouraging them to move away from a self-centered lifestyle to a Christ-centered lifestyle is not really new. It's just new in the minds of most patients and most of those persons in the healthcare field over the last 300 or 400 years, but that was not new. Traditionally, the minister and the physician were one and the same person.
You know, one of the things, Dr. Poe, I think that is important in reference to this is that those individuals who somehow, and I think you've described these individuals as self-centered individuals, many of these individuals are sort of caught up in quite a bit of the stresses of society. And we've talked about this, I think, on a number of occasions, but how does stress fit into this whole idea of religion and health? I mean, explain that to our audiences.
Well, that's a very good question, because it raises the question, what are some of the major contributing factors to mental health problems and to chronic physical health problems? And of course, you know, there's a good deal of discussion today about the role of genes or the role of our inheritance. But I'm convinced that stress, and of course the research that's been done over the last 50 years clearly shows that stress is a major factor in the onset and prevalence of mental as well as physical illnesses. But what the research has not yet shown is that a major source of stress, okay, that contributes to illness is the self-centered behavior of the person, him or herself, and or the self-centered behavior of others who've had some negative impact on the affected person. So what that really says is sin is a major source of negative stress, and negative stress is a major contributing factor to both chronic mental and chronic physical illness. And of course we need more research to show that relationship.
In other words, if you do not engage in what you might describe as sin, then more than likely you're not going to be stressed out or have severe health problems or chronic health problems. Is that a...
Well, that's close. I don't think any of us can be totally God-centered or Christ-centered or unselfish. We can't totally live a life pleasing to God. But if we are willing to try, then yes, it reduces our negative stress and it decreases the risk of our developing certain chronic mental and physical illnesses. It also improves our self-esteem. Does it mean if I'm living a God-centered life that I'm not going to get ill? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does decrease my negative stress, and it decreases, therefore, a major risk factor that's involved in me developing, say, diabetes or hypertension or depression or anxiety disorders or panic disorder, et cetera, et cetera.
And so stress is really a biological and physiological kind of situation. I mean, it's something that might come from outside of you, but it has a greater impact upon you from the inside. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, that's a very good question. Yes, you can stress me by mistreating me. We stress each other every day by mistreating people. And I can stress myself I can stress myself and you when I mistreat you. I'm stressing myself and I'm stressing you. Now, I think that the stress that comes to me as a result of my own self-centered or sin-centered behavior over the long haul does more damage to me, and I'm going to experience more negative consequences than the stress that you do to me. All right?
Okay.
You see how that sets up? In other words, if I mistreat you, I'm stressing you, but I'm also stressing myself. The health consequences of me mistreating you over the long haul is going to impair me. It's going to impair my health much more than the stress that you cause me as a result of you mistreating me.
And so and this, I guess this is what you mean when you say self-centered behavior, because it's the decision that the individual makes whether to give stress or not to give stress that will depend upon, that will have quite a bit to do with his health and well-being and his mental outlook. Is that?
Absolutely. We've said before that the person who commits suicide generally has a history of being highly self-centered, that the suicide rate is generally higher in cultures and in groups and in individuals who are highly self-centered. And it doesn't mean that everybody who commits suicide was highly self-centered, but the more self-centered I am, the more selfish I am, the more I'm going to impair my mental and physical health, and basically the more I'm going to suffer in the long run. Now, we've come to realize that people who abuse other people, they may seem to be doing pretty good for a while, all right? So good that people that they abuse often become envious of them. But if you follow them over a period of time, they will end up suffering more impaired health and more other problems than the people that they've abused.
Dr. Poe, in 36 seconds, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Does
Absolutely.
that have any kind of relationship here?
It has all kinds of positive health benefits.
And if a person could simply do that,
Yes.
just follow as what they might call the golden rule, do
Yes.
unto others as you would have them do unto you, then you think that whatever health problems they might have, at least they can start meeting some of those challenges that they might have with their health.
That's the treatment, that's the medicine that God ordains for all of us.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Poe, let us thank you again for that excellent information, and let us encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.